University, Potchefstroom. Dr. Metula, thank you for honoring today and being our first guest as we launch this Young Researchers Hub outside of the conference of the university and allowing the science and the community to merge in one place. And I thank you for giving us your time and welcome. How are you today?
Thank you, Isa. Thank you for inviting me. I am really feeling honored. I am okay. I am coping with everything that is happening out there. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad that you are coping. And so today, Dr. Metula, we want to unpack what we call research.
Yes.
And different research writers have written that research is something that we do now with the accessibility of our computers and internet, which is they call quasi-research because it's just research. But then you find that there is research that you're in, which is what we categorize as scholarly research. Please take us through what is this thing called research?
Okay, thank you, Isa. Research is a process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic or a certain issue, or to gain new knowledge about a certain issue or a certain topic. So when you do this research process, you have to go through 3 steps. So the first step of conducting a research is when you need to identify a gap in your area of specialization, or you need to pose a question or on what you need to find out. So that means you need to find a gap in your area of specialization or in your area of interest. So the first question for this step, which is finding a gap or identifying a gap, is to ask yourself, what do you want to find out, or which gap do you want to fill? So this could be influenced by your own personal experience or your own observations. So we all know that interests differ from one person to another. So does the research interest. And then while you are still identifying the gap or identifying the topic that you want to work on, you need to ask yourself, why do you want to conduct a research? So the basic principle in life, in everyday life, is to find a purpose in everything that you do or in everything that you want to do. That applies in research as well. So you need to be able to know why you want to gain more knowledge or new knowledge about a certain issue or a topic. And you also need to know why is that information necessary in your field of study or to the society at large. So the third question that you need to ask yourself while you are still in the first step of your research is to how are you going to conduct this research? So here there are many research methods that you can think of that you can apply in your study. So the methods will enable you to get the answers that you want. So those methods or tools depend on the nature of study that you want to conduct. For example, if you want to gain knowledge about a certain cultural practices, you can do an ethnographic study where you join a group of people for a certain duration of time so that you can learn how they practice certain things in their culture. So the last question that you need to ask yourself while you are still in the first step of conducting your research, or in the first step, which is identifying the gap in your research interest or in your field, is when do you want to conduct the study? So it is very important to set up a time frame when you conduct a research. It is also important to identify the time frame, the time when this information or knowledge that you want will be necessary. For instance, in the time when we experience imbalances in the education system in our country, looking for necessary interventions that balances or equalizes the education system is vital. So the time that you can do the research that is seeking for the balances or the interventions of equalizing the education is now. So after you've asked all your questions, all of those questions in the beginning of conceptualizing your research, the second step is to collect the data to answer the question. So now you've found out what do you want, when do you want to do it, how will you be conducting your study, and why do you want to conduct your study? And then the second step now is to conduct the research that answers your question. As I've already mentioned, there are many methods that you can think of. The methods will enable you to get answers that you want. Those methods or tools depend on the nature of the study that you want to conduct. You can do ethnographic observations and interviews. You can do experiments. You can do surveys, etc. That depends on the nature of information that you want. For instance, in cases where you want figures or statistics, you'll have to conduct your research by using questionnaires so that you can get those figures. So after you've conducted your research, you've collected, you've gathered your information, then the final step is to present an answer to the question. So in this step, it is where you will start writing your research report or your dissertation or your thesis. And here you need to demonstrate every step that you've taken in order to gain the answers to your question. This is very, very important, Lisa, because you don't want to be accused of posing invalid claims. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Metula. And I think as you take us through the steps, in a lot of people's mind, there is a question that, yes, to a greater part, the assumption will be that we understand. Why is it important for us to do research? And I'm asking this question because in a lot of times you find out that when we venture into our postgraduate studies, it's either because I'm not finding employment, so I don't want to sit at home, so I just have to do something. Then I go for my research. And in that aspect, there's a limitation of the researcher understanding as to why is it important. And I think in your explanation will inform the greater part of just one sentence that, yes, research is important because we have to understand society. I believe there's more to it than that. So please take us through, why is it important for us, even when I'm deciding to go through my research? I think the important part will be to also understand why this is important. And in answering that question allows them to roll out the questions or whatever that I want to research in that research area.
Okay, thank you, Isa. It is quite important to know that through research, we are able to build knowledge and learning. And it is very important to note that research is required not just for students and academics, but for all professionals, because in every corner in life, we need knowledge that will equip us as we come through different and new challenges in life. So that is the first importance of research. Secondly, research enables us to get means of understanding various issues For instance, I can make of television shows and movies that have been developed through research, both on the part of the writers and the actors. Hence, in most of the times, we find ourselves reflecting and relating on what we watch. So I can make an example of the Skeem Sam soapie. I think most of people do watch the Skeem Sam. The possibility is that their actors haven't experienced any of the characteristics they pose in their characters. But incredible research has been conducted to teach us and to inform us about many social problems that we encounter in our everyday life. And then the third important part of conducting research is to help us succeed in the businesses, in our businesses. So through research, you can be able to detect who is your target market, and you're able to know the right time to sell your goods. So you cannot easily know that if you haven't go through the research steps, or if you haven't conducted research. So the fourth important thing that we need to know about the importance of research is that it allows us to disapprove lies and support the truth. There is nothing that is embarrassing as to just agreeing in everything that you hear. And everything that you are being told. You don't even know which is right or which is wrong. So it is important for us to read more books, to try to find out the truth by ourselves. So the fifth thing that we need to know about the importance of research is that it promotes love and confidence in writing, in analyzing and sharing valuable information. And the final thing that I want to point out as the importance of research is that research enables us to exercise our minds. We always want to find out new things. We always want to explore. We always want to evaluate certain things. So in that process, your mind is exercising.
Thank you, Dr. Metula. Sorry, you mentioned something that has been my issue when it comes to society in general. Your fourth point on that people receive information and they never get to question what they're receiving. And especially in South Africa, media has played an incredible role in sometimes creating chaos, sometimes giving information for different parts. And what happens in most of the time, people see a headline and you'll see people having arguments, conversations, and someone else will say, but you didn't even check the content because the content is different from what you are saying. So there's a very big gap between us and consuming information as a country. And my next question will be, how has your experience been for young students who want to go to research? How are they interacting with research, and how are you experiencing them as a lecturer and as a supervisor?
Okay, Issa, in my own experience as an academic, I always find that students want to do research because it is a requirement to get a qualification. And you'll find that the student doesn't even know what he or she wants to do. Or if the student knows the topic, it's just the topic. Otherwise, the student doesn't relate to the topic. I always suggest my students to look for something that is very attached to them, meaning they have to look for something that that they have interest in, so that their argument will balance. They won't have the argument that is just in the surface. Because when you don't know or you don't understand this issue, you haven't read about it, you just decided to write a topic because it has these big fancy words, and then you decide, yeah, this is my research topic. Then along the line, you will find problems because you don't have a deeper knowledge about this topic. And now it becomes a problem mostly when you have to do the literature review, because you have to explain to evaluate every concept that you put in your topic as your research study. So if you really don't have a deeper knowledge, or if you don't connect with what you want to write, you might find it boring. For instance, in my study, that is based on local web newspapers as tools for framing food security. I chose that study because personally, I've experienced food insecurity, and I've observed it in my surroundings, because where I grew up in a disadvantaged area, and I also studied in a university that is mainly comprised of students that are coming from disadvantaged communities. So I know it, I personally experienced it. So at least I had a deeper understanding of it, even though I needed to find out more about the interventions that can be done in a media setting.
All right, thank you, Doctor. On what you're talking about, quite a few students, I'll say a few because those are that I've interacted with, that you find out that they throw a tantrum of the supervisor choosing the topic, or rather directing them to a certain topic. And I would then have an assumption, or now after what you say, that students come to you and they don't know, or they just know that this is the topic I want, but there's no knowledge beyond that. What could be the reasons that you're now facing an honor student that does not even have an idea of how to build up on a topic, to an extent that it now becomes a supervisor's decision, or rather influence, to go in a direction that they wouldn't have necessarily been inclined with or even have experience in? What is it that we're doing wrong as a country in our education system that put us in this predicament of finding students heavily dependent on supervisors to carry on their research?
Is identifying a research gap and conceptualizing a topic are two different things. So the first thing that you need to do is identify a gap. Then you'll be able to conceptualize a topic. And then I think in a space of conceptualizing a topic, that's where your supervisor comes in. If you can come to your supervisor and tell him or her that you found this gap, and then you start pitching up your problem, the problem statement as to why you want to write about this issue or about this topic. And then your supervisor will help you to conceptualize a topic that will speak to your issue. But the problem now comes when you don't even have a clue of what you want to research about. Then the supervisor have to take you through the whole research, the whole conceptualizing a research topic process.
Okay, Doctor.
And it is quite important to know that once someone else helps you to conceptualize the topic, as I've already mentioned before, everyone has his or her own research interest. So you cannot expect that person to read your mind. Obviously, when I help you in conceptualizing a research topic, I'll be influenced by my own interests.
True what you're saying, Doctor. And so then the next question I want to ask, which is, I think a lot of young people, this again, like what you're saying, it's based on my own experience of when I first encountered research. I had done my undergrad, but I had no clue. I didn't know that I had needed to find a gap, and then my question is, how do you identify the gap? Because sorry, because what happens is you find out that on the area that you want to research in, there are already people who have written on that area. So what would then go in the mind of a young scholar is, many people have talked about this. Where do I identify the niche? How do I identify the niche in this whole big research that has already been done, in order for me to put my own perspective into it and add on the conversation?
You know, Issa, once you start telling yourself that there is a lot that has been done in this field, or there is a lot that has been written about this issue, that means you haven't exhausted your reading, because there is always a gap. So you need to start reading and take your reading seriously. Then you'll find a gap. But okay, if you haven't read, if you haven't gave yourself time to read, for instance, I sometimes suggest that you go through the literature review even before you start conceptualizing your topic, so that you will be able to find a gap in your reading process.
Okay, Doctor. You've taken us through the first part of what research is, and the reason why I've started this, as I've said most of the time, that I want to bridge a gap between the science and the community. I've decided on my topic, and I've decided on the area I want to research in. And when I go to the community, or as I embark on this journey, what is my role as a researcher in taking through this research, both as a person writing this research and also as a person who goes to society to find participants, or even if I'm doing it with using a secondary data, what is my role as a researcher?
Okay, the role of you as a researcher is to be a facilitator and a participant in the research process. For instance, when you want to find out about a certain issue in a community, you work with a range of stakeholders. It could be the community members, the community leaders, the religious leaders, like everyone who is in the community, the children, the parents, you know, and then you can do that through interviews or discussions. So in this scenario, the aim for you as a researcher is to facilitate the discussion and information gathering with the aim of gaining knowledge and later suggest solutions or the actions. So it is important to note that your responsibility goes beyond being a particular conductor of the research program or the facilitator of this research program. And it has an explicit social, economic, or political, or scientific, or a health change agenda. That means your agenda could be to bring the social change, could be to bring the economic change, the scientific change, or the political change, or the health change. So for you is to bring the change, is for you to facilitate the discussions that will enable you to enforce that agenda, or to bring or to enforce the actions that you need to be taken to solve a specific issue.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Now that you've completed the research, outside of, let's assume that before we didn't have such platforms as, I would say, the Young Researchers Hub and many other platforms that allow the science and the community to merge together. Research conferences often sit in big conference outside of the community. As a researcher, what can you do to ensure that the community that you were facilitating, as a facilitator, how do you merge your research in the community? Because like you say, a lot of young people in our institutions do research as a requirement without the understanding of that there's bigger role to play than what they're reducing their research to be. What can we do to make sure that our communities get to have our own results, to have our own recommendations? Because at the current moment, it's barely happening. Universities, they have a conference, we go in a hotel, we sit and have a conference. The same community we're researching has no idea of what are your findings.
Yes, it is true that there is a huge gap between the public and the knowledge producers. And that is mainly because the platforms in which we tend to share our research outputs on, in most cases, they are exclusive to the public. For instance, we conduct seminars in the boardrooms, hold conferences in expensive hotels. We put our dissertations in the libraries, publish our work in academic journals, where the possibilities that those who will access those publications are mainly the researchers that are interested in your field, who also want to produce their own research outputs as well. So it's just the chain. So that is very problematic because we exclude the people that need this information or that need this knowledge. And in most cases, the people that contributed to the knowledge or to this information. So I believe that science should be inclusive. It should not be something that only a certain group of people know or are able to understand and access. As the scientific research impacts the lives of millions of people, directly or indirectly. Simple communication is a great way to generate conversations, collaboration, and learning. And when you constantly having the communication, you'll be able to gain more insights about the issue, and that will also enforce learning about the issue to a broader society. So with that, you'll solve the societal problems as a collective. So we must be able, we must be open to the dialogues that are inclusive and that are participatory to everyone. For instance, we live in a society that media, especially social media, is part of our everyday routine. There's, we can blog, we can open the social media pages that can help us in facilitating those discussions. And we can also share our research findings with the governing institutions. We can write the opinion pieces in the local or community newspapers that could help in disseminating the knowledge to a wider audience.
You mentioned quite a number of things, Doctor, and I think that allows us to bridge the gap. And my other question that I'll pose, again, there's been a conversation being on social media or even within small circles of the scholarly academia circles that we're not having enough researchers to produce the information that we need to bring the content that we need for our people. We speak of decolonization, and the next question is, who's producing the knowledge? How far are we as a country 27 years later in having enough professors to write those books that can be part of our curriculum as a society. And to have these people that constantly produce knowledge, especially when it comes to Black professors, how far are we as a country?
I don't want to lie, we are making a progress, but the progress that we are making is maybe one-sided, and it is not everywhere. For instance, we all understand the functionality of the society, right? That it is comprised of different institutions. We have the religious institutions, the economic institutions, we have media, we have churches, you know, we have education sectors. So in terms of decolonizing the society, I think the education system, or the higher education system is trying, and it has made, it is making a progress in terms of decolonizing the curriculum or even the higher education spaces. But now that is problematic because in my own observation, it only happens in the higher education sector only. If you go to the basic education sector, nothing has changed. And if you go to the political institutions, nothing has changed. If you go to the religious institutions, nothing has changed. If you go to the media, nothing has changed. So now, once we have the imbalances in the society in terms of knowledge and information, then we are doomed to fail. We won't even see if there are changes, because the only people that are experiencing these changes or this decoloniality is us that are in the higher education sector. But if I go out to the community and speak about these issues, these decoloniality issues, no one will understand what I'm talking about, because there's nothing that has been done in other institutions in terms of decolonizing our society.
Thank you, Dr. Someone once said universities are ivory towers, and they remain that because they far-fetched from the society. And like what you had mentioned, that when I go to a seminar, I am trying to understand how far you've gone to your research in order to do my research, but it only, the circle remains between me and you, but between us and the society, it remains a huge gap that we have. Doctor, before I go into the comment sections that people have, my last question will be to you. As a society in general, me and you are in agreement that our society, it's evolving. Research is being done, but there is no communication between the two sectors in ensuring that at the end of the day, there's a link in terms of what we have. But besides the community, how is our policymakers using research as a tool to make decisions, as a tool to have more policies in our society? I am asking this because there's one area, which is I won't mention because I'm currently working in, where quite a number of researchers have said that when the government made a particular act, there was no research evidence that supports that it's happening in the huge scale that is being said. As a result, the policy was made out of a limitation of research, and research was used as a secondary thing. They mostly based on the public opinion, but there was no research evidence to support that what the public is saying is exactly what the researchers are finding. So that is my first question, is how the policymakers are using research in terms of writing policies, but also at the same time, would it be an advisable thing if policymakers would rely a lot on public opinion in writing their policies?
I think, Lisa, the question here should be how the policies should be influenced by the research that has been conducted. Because personally, I don't know if our governing bodies or our governing institutions do go deeper and look at the research that has been conducted. Because I believe that a lot has been done in trying to solve our problems, but those recommendations or the findings, they don't reach the government institutions, or even if they do reach those government institutions, they don't use them. They rather try to conduct their own studies. So I think there is still a gap in what we produce as researchers and what the policy makers want. Otherwise, they do need to conduct research. They do need to use the studies that we have conducted in creating their policies. And finally, Issa, on your final question, they need to understand that the communities need to be active participants in their policy making. They need to treat the communities as active participants of science production and not just as subject for investigation. So that there could be that interaction, because we all understand that people know their problems that they are facing in their communities more than anyone else. You cannot come from East London and tell me about what is happening in Mabelin, and then you also suggest solutions for our problems. We know in our community, we know how can we solve our problems. Yours is to intervene and help us to navigate the way around solving those problems, not telling us what to do. Yours is to facilitate.
Thank you, Doctor. Now we go to the public as they have their own questions. From my side, I'm stopping there. So this is from Sbusiso Maneli saying, thank you, Doctor, for the information, and I have a few questions for you. So I'll go through the first question you answer, and then I go to the second one. Okay. The first question is from a researcher or postgraduate perspective, what are the key things to look out for before you start your dissertation or mini dissertation? Assuming that either they are in honors, masters, or PhD, depending on the level they're in. So what are the key things to look out for?
I've already mentioned this is when I was taking you through the steps of conducting the research, that you need to firstly identify the gap that you want to focus on, and that can be influenced by your observations or your personal experiences. And once you find that gap, you need to sit down and look at the methods that you can use in order for you to find answers to your topic or to the issue that you have identified. And once you find the correct methods and you have identified your gap, then you'll be able to conceptualize a topic, because sometimes even the topic of the research is influenced by the methodology that you'll use when you conduct your study. So you need to be careful when you select a topic.
Okay, Doctor. Thank you for that. And the second question is, in what ways can we as postgraduate students, especially master's level, maximize our lived experiences in pursuit of research that is contextual to our realities?
I didn't get that question, Isa.
Oh, so the question says, in what ways can we as postgraduate students maximize our own lived experiences in pursuit of a research that is contextual to our own lived experience? And I think the question, as he's putting it, is in the extent of how do you become neutral into the situation? Because you're using your own personal experience, and when you're doing it, you might be sometimes biased to certain things and have pre-concluded ideas, which might then be hindering. So I think it's a matter of, yes, I want to maximize my own experiences, but at the same time remain neutral to the situation.
So there is nothing that we call biasness in research, as long as you followed the right steps of conducting your research. That means you had your subjects, your participants of your research, and your findings are mainly on what you have gathered from your participants. Like we don't close the door for your own ideas or your own perceptions. In fact, that is what we want. When you write your literature, you cannot write the literature only. Maybe you write about all these theories of media and communication, and then you just put it there. We want to see what do you understand, in as much as you are putting down what these theories have said, but what do you understand? What is your own idea? What is your own view about what these theories have said? And that can be influenced by your personal experiences too, by your own observations. So that door is not closed. It is always open. Hi, Isa.
Hi, Doctor. I think there's a network glitch. I don't know whether it's from...
But I can hear you.
Hi, Doctor. Sorry. There was a network glitch from my side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. Thank you for your answer. And then the last question, which is something that we will touch on our second session, is on the literature review, which is, I believe, you very much enjoyed that topic a lot. So the speaker say, "Oh, Luvo, I have seen your hand. I'll give you a chance after this one." The last question from Sbuso is, literature review tends to be the most difficult process that students feel it, like when they drink literature, they feel it is very difficult. Please provide tips on how to approach it.
Okay. Firstly, when you conduct your research, you need to align your literature to the aim of your study. And the aim of your study is always aligned to the topic of your study. So that means you'll break down your aim, the aim of the study. And then you'll find the concepts that you want to write about in your literature review. For instance, if you are discussing about some development issue, then you need to break it down. Maybe you are discussing about any social issue. Then you write you discuss that social issue. It can be teenage pregnancy, and then maybe you discuss how this teenage pregnancy affects the community development in the communities, and anything that is related to this topic. Then you have to read. You have to read it and try to find the whole knowledge, the whole information about it. And then there is that part of theoretical framework. You know, you have this theory that build your study. And then you write this theory, and then you have to look at the basic principles of this theory. Every theory has always the basic principles. And then once you pinpoint those basic principles, then you'll now discuss each basic principle as it is applied or as it is applicable to your study. So you need to pinpoint every principle and discuss every principle in your theoretical statement. Same applies to the literature. You need to pinpoint every principle that you find while you are reading about this topic, and then you apply it to this specific study that you are doing.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Luvo, I'm gonna give it to you now that you can pose a question to Dr. Metula, and then I'll continue the conversation. The floor is yours. Please unmute your mic.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Doc, thank you very much for this session. I've learned a lot. Let me just declare that I'm in the process of submitting my master's proposal. So okay. I have learned a lot of number of things. Now, I just want to ask a question. Do you think in our lifetime, particularly these years, we have grown a fear as academics? As we grow, once you have honors, you feel like when you have honors, you're not ready. And when you have masters, you feel like when interacting with the people who have progressed a lot in the field, you're not ready. To an extent that the information that you have gathered at honors level, you feel that it is not sufficient enough for people's ears. And do you think that also restrict us from writing books about the things that we have researched? If, for example, I can make one example. I have never, in my own capacities, attended a book launch by a person who says, from the research I have conducted, I decided to turn it into a book, at least at my level. And I have noticed that I have also attended a lot of books written by people with grade 12. So do you think more education does also make us have a little bit of fears? That's my question.
Okay, Luvo. I don't think you should fear anything, or you should think that the information that you have is little. Every information, every opinion, every view is important. So you don't even need to feel intimidated by me. I've conducted my research, even if we were to say we conducted research on food security, me and you, but I had my own gap and you have your own gap. We come from different angles. So every idea that you put forward is important. Don't even think that you can't say anything. I think this thing of not going out and presenting or sharing your knowledge or your research outputs with everyone, it makes us to take a step back, and we want to know if we are progressing or what do we do about our research. But if you go out there, you realize that Even other people, they need your opinion. They don't know what you are talking about. They want to hear from you because we come from different backgrounds, we have different perceptions. So it is important for everyone to put their knowledge forward. Whether it's your undergrad research or your honors research or your master's research, we always find a little gap and you cannot know everything. I am a doctor of philosophy in communication, but I don't know everything in communication. We also learn from each other. I also learn from my students, from my first year students. There are things that I learn from them because now information is not solely dependent on where to get from the lecturer. Information is out there. Everyone is using internet. We are on social media. We are interacting with the society, especially in my field, because what I teach is mainly influenced by what is happening in the society. So I cannot expect my students to be the empty vessels. Obviously, when they come to class, they come with their own knowledge from what they have experienced outside.
Thank you, Doctor. We're going to run out of time. And from my view now, as we're unpacking the conversation, and someone had asked me a question yesterday about what is quantitative research, I do realize a second session is needed on quantitative research, the ethnography, and many other things to unpack, because I also think that's where the struggle is. How do you choose your framework? How do you decide on the tools to use? It's still a bone of contention for many younger people to understand as to where do I go? Okay, I understand my topic and everything else, but how do I then now decide on the methodology? How do I decide on the framework? So we still need to unpack a lot of those things. And I thank you, Doctor, for your time. My last question to you, and that I'll also ask you that you do your closing remarks, will be, what can we do to make research a culture for young people? Looking at how our university undergraduate studies are structured, there's barely ever any interaction with research. Now, you get me at your honors level as a supervisor. I am empty. I do not understand. You have to start from scratch, which is, I find, would be very difficult because you're expecting that at least I would have gone a certain mile to understand. What can be done, or what do you think needs to be restructured in our whole entire system when it comes to structuring undergraduate studies?
I don't fully understand why we say we only deal with research at the postgraduate level. That introductory module that you got at your undergraduate level about the introduction of criminology. When you maybe get an introduction to criminology, you get to know, you are taught about different theoretical backgrounds of the criminology. That's what you need to apply when you conduct your literature review. That's what you need to apply when you have to conduct your theoretical framework. But we ignore it at that level. And then when it comes at a master's level or a PhD level, now you have to remind yourself about something that you were told at level 1. The research methods, I think at a second level, you are taught about the research process, but in that level, they only give you the steps. You only list the steps, they don't go deeper on that. And then when you reach the postgraduate level, that's when you go deeper in explaining all those steps. The steps in research will always be the same. What you get on a first level is what you'll apply when you do your PhD. That's that introduction that you learn in that module is the introduction that you'll learn, that you'll have to apply when conducting your research at the PhD level. So we just need to start taking our studies seriously at a lower level before we reach the postgraduate level.
Thank you, Dr. Metula, for your time. And as what you just said, I've never looked at it that way, because to us, it was about getting the marks, studying what was being given. It was never about research. I never saw research in all of that. All I wanted was to get my marks and make sure that I proceed to the next level.
You know, you'll be surprised that a first year level will be taught about the participatory theory. And then when she gets to the honors level, and then now you give her a topic, and then now you say the theory that you need to use is the participatory theory. And then the student will start from scratch reading as if it's something new.
Yeah, no, I think it's our way of learning. But also I also pose a challenge to the lecturers of first year student, maybe making a bit of awareness, because I went through all of that. I was not aware that I was learning about research. And when I first encountered research, like,
we should understand, all of us, that studying is like a series. You know, when you watch series, you know that you watch episode 1, episode 2. It goes like that. Even in your studies, you just continue. It's a continuation.
Thank you, Doctor. And someone who just joined in, Awonke Maya, had literally said that on Monday when I was doing an interview to him, that the reason why he did his study guide as grade 11 and grade 12, because it's a series of things. You need to recap and take it further. It's not like a block. It's not like a movie where you just do this and do that and do that. It's a series of things. And I think if we were to understand education from that point of view, a lot would change. Because I do believe now, even how we are motivated about education, I remember saying to my friends that I have done my part in life because I was taught to get good grades, study hard, finish my first degree, get a job, and I did exactly that routine. There was no anything that talked about research. There was no anything about contributing to society beyond that. All I ever been taught was the lifeline of you get to do your high school, primary and everything. You go to university, you get a job, you work for the rest of your life, you die. There was no in between of anything that is different. And I think most of us are living through that series of line of there's a linear line that we have to follow in living this life. And hence you find that there are less people who are inclined into falling in love with reading. We have a problem of reading in our country. People do not read. A paragraph like this on Facebook feels so long because we're not accustomed to reading. And research requires people to read a lot. And if we're a country that struggles with reading, it means we're a country that will struggle in having researchers, because the two are intertwined, they work together. And I think it's also because of how we've been told in our younger age that there's a linear line that you go through, and if you follow that line, your life will be okay. And you get to that part where you finish with your postgrad, with your undergrad, and you realize life is not as we're told. It's a whole different thing. And now some of us get to be interested to contribute in society, but our minds are still confined in what we have been taught, and we're unable to grow beyond that box and find ourselves being researchers and all of that. And I think that's why as a Black community, we've struggled a lot when it comes to having more professors, having more people who produce researchers. Also talking to what Luvu was talking about, the fear of making your ideas being out there, because even the teaching has always been about the teacher being in front and the learner taking whatever that is there. Now, research allows you to put even your own work out there to the people, and it becomes a thing of, would people be receptive in what I'm talking about? Would it be a contribution to the world? Would it make any difference? And many other questions that they have. And people end up saying, you know what, I'll stick in my own little corner I'll do my job, and that's where it ends. And I feel like we have a lot of people that have so much to contribute to the world, but fear is what holds them back. And if we were to teach our kids and to love reading, and it will then translate into the love of reading, would translate into the love for writing, because now they would want to put their own thoughts into paper to share what they understand about what they've read. And I think in that way, we'll gain more of the researchers we need. And I think it's a task that we need to also take as lecturers, as community people. We need to make a culture of reading as something that becomes a part of a society. If you wake up one day and say, I'm going to do a competition for kids Beleni every December to read, and anyone who reads better, they'll get a trophy or whatever, there's a reward. I do believe that every child will work to all the year trying to make sure that at the end of the day of the year, there's that trophy that Dr. Metula is going to give me if I read well and if I translate well what I've read, and I'm able to write. And I think that will then grow a young generation of readers, writers, and ultimately having knowledge producers. And from us, the Young Researchers Hub and Dr. Metula, we thank you for your time and joining us, as we'll come back next week with a different topic on the Young Researchers Hub. Again, tackling this animal code research and making science a part of the whole entire community, and making sure that as science and the community become one, and that our people don't only become participants of the research, but also become part and parcel of engaging that research, implementing our recommendations. We have seen throughout the country the outcry of government departments outsourcing the research people, and only to find out what they research about does not tally with our community. I give out a task and ask people to make research a part of them, to make postgraduate studies something that they will take. And when they do the research, they understand that they are not only acquiring a certificate, but they are growing an entire community. And there's a lot of people that are looking up to them, and their answers will change a whole entire society. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your weekend. Rest. Monday is coming, but please do social distance, sanitize, wear your mask, ensure that you're safe. We're facing a pandemic, and we still need you more than we ever needed you before, because we're people and we need each other. From me, Sasfingoisi, it's a thank you, and God bless you. And may you stay blessed and have a great weekend. Bye. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Isa.